You're watching Business Incorporated live from Channels HQ. Coming up, Fitch Ratings says Ghana's debt restructuring will impact Nigerian banks. And a World Bank survey shows 12% of Kenyan households take loans to buy food. Plus, Egyptian pound shorters bet on another drop as IMF meeting nears. Thank you for joining us on Business Incorporated. I'm Ladi Williams. First off, let's take a look at how the markets are doing, starting with Africa. I will see sentiment there. It's positive today. You see behind me there with the NGX there at the hour. We took this up 0.75%, strongly in green territory. South Africa there, 74,806 points, up 0.52%. And we see other markets we tracked. EGX there closing up 1.41% yesterday. A big move there from the EGX. And you see Kenya there closing down negative yesterday, down 0.19%. Well, let's take a peep into the NGX proper now with Abdurrashid Momo, equity trader at TRW Stockbrokers. Great to have you on the program. So I saw last I checked the market, sentiment was positive, a deep one for that matter. But how's it looking at this hour?
Still looking positive. All the indexes are full fire, all in green. Everything is in green. All the indexes are in green, so the market is doing very well. So the last time we spoke, I said if market passes a critical resistance line, we'll start seeing more of the bulls charging towards the 50,000 points scenario. So far this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the market moved up marginally, then dropped on Thursday, but market is up today, so I think we expect to see a positive close this week overall, and everything seems to be doing well till date.
So it looks like traders had a good outing this week. What are the stocks moving the markets today?
Basically the top ones now. I think we're seeing Prestige, Julius Berger, Thomas Watt, Ella Lake. Those are the ones that are the major, like 10 to 9% gain. Then when it comes to losers, Beta Glass, Mayer, Cornell, and Boaf. But I always tell people, when the market is up marginally, the most important thing in terms is to look at volume. And when you look at volume, look at big players like Sterling, Gitco, I think Prestige, UCAP. Those are the ones that are top in terms of volume. But if you look at some other players, you actually see that their volume in terms of it's not the normal market you see. Sellers actually taking over the overall thing. You see now that even in the bank, most of the stocks we are seeing more buyers than sellers. So what's happening now is that I always tell people after market consolidates, there's always a breakout. Throughout this week, we've not really seen any major moves in the end of the market. So what I feel is happening that market stocks are trying to see how they can manage the support and resistance lines for there's a breakout. Example, at least I don't know why I keep using Zenith. Zenith is going to be in the 22 naira range now, so we're going to see how it does before we see a new breakout. And again, we are entering, as we always say, the Santa Claus season. It's around the corner, so I think we expect to see more of things this time around.
And what key resistance levels should we watch out for?
Well, the one I analyzed, NGX Bank, right? It has hit resistance level and it hasn't broken it. All we're just seeing more of correction to the downside. And I said that, the way the market works, when the banks do their own, they'll step aside for the other players like MTN, Boas Cement. Lately, I've been watching Boas Cement from 18 naira, and it had a strong resistance of 85. But 85 has been the all-time high for Boas Cement. But this period, Boas Cement is trading about 86 naira, which has broken that psychological level. So when this kind of period, when you see stocks start breaking new highs, it only takes time for others to follow. And as Boa is doing, he's doing 86. If it goes above that, I think the next target to about 90 naira, which will actually be the all-time new high. But for us trading now, it has made a new high, all-time new high, which is about 86. So I'll always say when something moves, others follow with time. So I think Boa is the one actually, and it's a very large, we have a large cap. So when it moves, it actually drags others along, just like MTN, the Airtel, and the rest. But for now, the overall, most of the indexes, the only one that is on red, NGX, TN, SMR, TDS, but every other index is green for now.
All right, so
very interesting.
It's the end of the trading week. What stocks are on your radar going into next week?
As I've said, support and resistance level, we are seeing volume in Zenith, we are seeing volume in GTP, we are seeing volume in UBA, UCAP. Let's see, hold on. Actually had some, okay. Yeah, UCAP, Boas Cement, Fidelity, PZ, FCNB, Adova, NGX Group, Union Bank, Senate support. Those are the ones we have as we call them stay with the trend. So these are the trends that we are watching now. We are staying with the trend because it's an uptrend.
All right, I guess we'll keep tracking those ones. Thank you so much. That was Abdurrashid Momo, equity trader, TRW Stockbrokers. Thank you for giving us your perspective today. And enjoy the week. You too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, bye.
All right, now that was Mr. Abdurashid Momo there giving us the details there for intraday trading on the NGX and what to expect for next week. Let's move on to the Middle Eastern markets now. Markets we track there, the UAE is still trading at intraday. We're seeing mixed sentiment there. And we see the Abu Dhabi index, they're down 0.26%, while on the flip side, you see the Dubai index, 3,325 points, up 0.16%. Flip over to Saudi Arabia and Qatar there. Those ones are closed today, and we see they closed positive yesterday, fully in the green. Let's move on to Europe now. We see climate protesters targeted two major airports in Germany with flight operations briefly disrupted in Munich, and an attempt to do the same in Berlin, apparently foiled by police. These are the latest in a series of controversial protest moves that are drawing increasing eye in the German public. For more now, let's talk to Chris Kober right there in Berlin. Great to have you, Chris. So why are these demonstrators gluing themselves to the airport runways?
They want to draw attention to their belief that political leaders are doing far too little to combat all the issues that are leading to climate change. Climate protesters have been more active across Germany in recent months, with the most prominent activists being the so-called Last Generation Group, which is based in Berlin. The group describes itself on its website as the, quote, last generation that could still prevent society from collapsing. Members say they accept high fees, criminal charges, and deprivation of liberty for their cause. So on Tuesday, 4 activists managed to make their way onto the northern runway of the Munich airport and spent around 45 minutes glued to the tarmac before they were dislodged and arrested. The environmental protest group said in a statement that it had carried out the protests in opposition to, quote, a major state-subsidized contributor to the climate catastrophe. In a simultaneous action on Thursday, climate activists in Berlin tried for a second time to disrupt operations at the international airport there. Police say say they managed to put a stop to the operation. About 2 weeks ago, members of the Last Generation group had, in fact, disrupted traffic at the Berlin airport for almost 2 hours. Some glued themselves to the tarmac, others cycled around the site. Now, the transport sector has been a particular target of the activists who have organized street blockades or have glued themselves to intersections and highways. One such incident drew controversy as it apparently prevented emergency workers from getting to the scene of an accident, with an injured cyclist subsequently dying.
Right, and how are people in Germany reacting to this?
Many people here in Germany are pretty angry about these protests, as they do really hinder them in their daily routines. I mean, nobody wants to be stuck in hours-long traffic jams because of protesters blocking the street. And at the same time, compassion coming from passengers missing their flights due to protests is also quite limited. But this sort of outrage is, of course, among the goals of the protesters, trying to create awareness for the problem that is climate change as people go on with their everyday lives. By the way, protests has not only been staged on highways or runways. In October, members of the Last Generation group glued themselves to an exhibition of a dinosaur skeleton at Berlin's Natural History Museum. And they also threw mashed potatoes at a painting of French artist Claude Monet in a museum outside of Berlin, after which activists glued themselves to the wall beneath the artwork, and the group later claiming in a statement that this painting was not going to be worth anything if we had to fight over food. The German government has condemned the style of the protests, notably including the Green Party. Economy Minister Robert Habeck saying that protest against environmental destruction is justified and right, but it should be chosen in such a way that people do not suffer unnecessarily, so that the acceptance in the population for climate protection is not endangered.
All right, Chris, what are investors in financial markets looking at now?
Global economic leaders today hailed China's move away from its hardline zero-COVID policy, with the head of the International Monetary Fund saying that the, quote, decisive actions would help revive growth both in China and globally. And this sentiment has been helping lift stocks today. The DAX in Frankfurt is also trading on the upside this morning, rising about 0.3%. In the hours ahead, investors will be looking at fresh data coming from U.S. producer prices, from which conclusions they try to draw on how consumer prices have been developing and what further monetary response by the Federal Reserve could look like. The U.S. Central Bank is holding its final policy meeting next week.
All right, we'll be looking out for that. Thank you so much. That's Chris Koba. Right there in Berlin, giving us the details from Europe. Now, moving on to the UFC, stock futures rose slightly today as investors look ahead to new inflation data. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average there climbed 0.22%. The S&P 500, 4,011 points, holding on to that 4,000 level, up 0.34%, while the Nasdaq, tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite there, 11,808 points, up 0.42%. Now let's get a summary of yesterday's closing market. Correspondent Maria Bird.
The U.S. stock market rebounded on Thursday, breaking a 5-day losing streak. The Dow Jones was up by 0.5%. The S&P 500 closed at 0.8% up, and the heavy tech Nasdaq closed at 1.1% up. It is clear that many investors lost the jitters and are no longer concerned about interest rate increases or a recession with the economy. This all was clear on Thursday as we saw major gains in the U.S. stock market. Many investors are also watching to see what will continue to happen over the next coming days, as December is one of the highest times of retail sales. The first week of December thus far has been one of the worst since 1975. So investors are hoping that that will turn around over the next days and weeks ahead.
And we'll definitely be watching out for that. That was correspondent there, Maria Bird from Washington. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, more stories from the African continent. Do stay with us. Welcome back now to West Africa, where restructuring of Ghana's debt would have some impact on some Nigerian banks operating in a neighboring country. And that's according to global credit rating agency Fitch Ratings. The statement describing the outlook for Nigerian banks as deteriorating, Fitch says asset quality would remain fundamentally conditioned by sovereign credit risk due to high sovereign exposure through securities and cash reserves at the Central Bank of Nigeria. According to Fitch, over 50% of banking system assets in Ghana are controlled by subsidiaries of South African, Nigerian and Togolese banking groups. Nigerian banks operating in Ghana are Access Bank, EcoBank, Fidelity Bank, Guarantee Trust Bank, Unity Bank of Africa and Zenith Bank. Ghana is pushing ahead with its plan to restructure its debt in a bid to qualify for a $3 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. On Monday, the country started offering domestic bondholders fresh local currency bonds that won't pay interest before 2024 in exchange for their existing debt. According to the World Bank survey, 12% of Kenyan households, according to the survey, 12% of households in the country took loans to buy food. The report released in December 2022 showed that the households took the measure to protect consumption as shockwaves hit the food market. The survey showed that 58% of households relied on friends and relatives for food, while 60% bought food on credit. The trend was high in rural areas, reporting 62% of households depending on credit for food and 71% of households in arid and semi-arid counties. The report also showed that Kenya's economy rebounded with real gross domestic product increasing by 6%, attributed to the growth in services and industry sectors as opposed to agriculture, which contracted by 1.5%. And investors are betting on a deeper slide in Egyptian pound as the North African nation awaits a final approval for a $3 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. Derivatives traders have stepped up wagers that Egypt will let its currency weaken by as much as 20% over the next 12 months. And with the IMF's executive board preparing to meet on December 16th, there's a debate over whether the Washington-based lender will be convinced by the pace of the pound's decline in the spot market since November. Analysts say there are signs that the currency is still being somewhat managed and the IMF may need further proof Egypt has adopted a truly flexible exchange rate. And Nigeria's market share of African goods export has been placed at about 12%, while the country is less than 5% in goods import. However, the cost of doing business may be a deterrent in expanding this market, its market share in its implementation of AfCFTA. So it was a major point of conversation at the AfCFTA implementation strategy validation meeting organized by the National Action Committee of the AfCFTA in Lagos, Southwest Nigeria. Senior advisor, Africa Trade Policy Center of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, was at the meeting, is asking that the strategy should be all-inclusive for effectiveness.
Dangote Group was making money with AfCFTA. It will even do better with this. But the people who are Igbo market, Tejosho market, Wuse market, all over Nigeria, they have to also say, even if I don't speak English and I cannot read all these models, I know that now I can export my products to Ghana and I don't have to worry about paying tariff that much. Without a national strategy, you can have you can sign the agreement, you can have the best of wishes and all that and aspiration, but if you don't have a strategy that is customized for your country, then you have a problem. And I said to myself, how do you define success in this regard? One, this thing must work for you, no matter who you are. If you are in this room, you have to see yourself in the picture. And what does that mean? You have to make money out of this.
And out to Southern Africa. South Africa's power utility, Eskom, continues to struggle to provide stable energy supply with rolling blackouts due to breakdowns at its power stations, outdated equipment and sabotage. At the moment, the country has regressed to stage 6 rolling blackouts. The country has embarked on a just energy transition, which aims to move away from coal-powered stations to renewable energy. It resulted in the Department of the Mineral Resources and Energy opening bids to independent power producers under the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program to supply cleaner energy. The department has signed 19 of the 25 projects from preferred bidders. Our correspondent, Brian Fugeni, has more on this.
efforts to improve the power situation in the country, South Africa's Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Gwede Mantashe, has signed off 13 more independent power producer agreements under bid window 5 of the IPP procurement program, and this brings the total to 19 signed off bidders.
We are signing agreements that are far-reaching. One will be signing agreements with bid window 5 contenders, and we're wishing them very well, give us more energy. I'm not one of the people who think that you will give us energy on Saturday. I know that you're going to build that capacity. You are going to give us energy in 12, 18, 24 months.
We are clearly not out of the woods. There's still some distance to go. And we do need to stay focused and continue to do the necessary things to fix the existing plant while we, in parallel, develop the necessary plans and roll out the infrastructure that's required to ultimately provide security of supply for the country. We do need, I guess, not to let the load shedding overshadow this very important occasion.
The IPPs from bid window 5 have a generation capacity of 7,100 megawatts, and this is set to ease pressure on the national power grid and move towards the just energy transition.
It will make a huge difference, given that, number one, you know that South Africa is battling with a shortage of electricity at the moment, where we are actually implementing load shedding. So any megawatts, any capacity that we can get onto the grid will definitely make a difference.
So we know the country well, and all our experience in the past has proved that the country is stable, that our revenues are guaranteed. So we have a great confidence in the country. The energy crisis that the country is facing is just it's another impulsion for us to do more.
South Africa has been plunged into further darkness as state-owned power utility Eskom has implemented stage 6 load shedding due to breakdowns at its power stations and lack of diesel to generate power. While the Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has given the Eskom board and management an ultimatum to sort out the problems, the people are looking to President Ramaphosa for answers.
This continues to be a concern, but I'm sure is being addressed by the various people who are mandated to do so, and we will continue focusing on what is best for South Africans.
Load shedding costs the economy about 500 million rands per day, and Eskom says it's working on stabilizing energy supply, but citizens must prepare for more load shedding in the next 6 to 12 months. As it stands, it looks like South Africans are headed into a dark festive season. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Brian Pugeni, Channels Television News.
That was Brian Pugeni there giving us the details from that meeting. Well, the U.S. President Joe Biden has invited 49 African heads of state, including Nigeria and the head of African Union, for a 3-day U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. According to a statement released by the U.S. Department of State, the goal of this historic summit, scheduled for December the 13th to 15th in the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C., will focus on building and expanding vital political, economic, and strategic partnerships, as well as people-to-people dialogue based on mutual interests and shared priorities in Africa. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, Mary Leonard, says among those other benefits, the upcoming summit presents opportunities to deepen U.S.-Nigeria bilateral ties on multiple levels. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching Business Incorporated. I'm Ladi Williams. Enjoy the weekend.